Dear organizers, dear participants, thank you so much for today's beautiful event and the rich program, which involved many diverse topics, lectures, and perspectives on child research and education. I'm so happy to be with you today, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to give me the floor, the time, and the space to discuss a topic that is really important to me. Although my research focuses a bit beyond the childhood age, it still has much to do with learning and exploring the learning processes in the out-of-school environment. So, as you can see from the slide, I would like to talk about youth pedagogy and how and also why it can be developed and implemented by youth workers in the context of youth work. First of all, why do we focus on the period of youth so much? We all know that youth is a remarkable step in one's development, which represents the transition from the dependent role of a child to the independent role of an adult. However, although very important, this is also a tough time, as young people experience a lot of challenges and changes, such as internal changes, like in their minds, bodies, thoughts, and feelings, as well as external, such as change in their role in the society, new demands they're expected to meet, taking over new responsibilities, and so on. Young people have many questions and not so many answers. They have new experiences, sometimes positive, sometimes quite difficult ones. And to make everything even more fun, the world we live in is also changing, imposing new challenges to all of us, including young people and adults. We still have not fully recovered from the pandemic, but we face new obstacles. We see the rapid and unpredictable rise of the technologies and artificial intelligence, which we all know that will change the way we live, communicate, work, and spend our leisure time. However, we still do not really know how exactly this would happen. But as a final result of this equation with so many variables, unknown variables, we expect young people to turn into adults who are fully equipped with all experiences, knowledges, skills, attitudes, and values for the bright future in their roles as professionals, maybe family creators, members of their communities, and citizens of our society. But how this could be done? Can we do something to support this process and help the young people? Here comes the role of the youth work. As it is still evolving and it is still gaining recognition, I would allow myself to quickly go through one of the brief definitions taken from the European Commission's publication on the quality of youth work. So, as we see from the highlights on the slide, at the center of youth work are young people who are voluntarily involved in actions aimed to support their personal and social development. In other definitions, we can also see that youth work is primarily directed at helping young people to reach their full potential. Another significant detail is that youth work happening voluntarily or in the out-of-school environment is ultimately based on the non-formal and informal learning. Examples of youth work could be different youth clubs or volunteer organizations such as the Scouts, the Red Cross and Red Crescent Youth, and many others. When young people join such, they co-create, co-organize and implement a lot of activities which help them develop new soft skills on how to behave in unfamiliar situations, how to manage their time, how to cooperate with others, solve conflicts, reach new information, new perspectives, and in many cases, new contacts. During my youth, I personally have been active in different organizations and even attended international projects and events. And talking from my own experience, I can now clearly see how all those experiences shaped me and as the person I am today. the things I know, the skills I have, as well as my attitudes and the perspective I have about the world around me. And talking about non-formal education, I just want to highlight the fact that it should be perceived and positioned in a strong relation with the formal one. I mean, formal and non-formal education shall not compete, contradict, or should not be seen as being in conflict. They complement and go hand in hand with each other. Each of them has its own characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses, and each of them is an important element of the same puzzle. I really cannot say that one of them is more important or better than the other one. Earlier today, we heard a lecture on harmonious child development, and in order to reach it, we need both academic knowledge, which would help us understand how the world around us is constructed and how it works, but we should also have the skills to meaningfully interact with this outer world. Such an idea was expressed almost a quarter of a century ago in the Council of Europe's recommendation on non-formal education, adopted on 24th of January 2000. Back then, the importance of non-formal education was already clearly visible to the policy makers due to the constant changes provoked by the rapid technological, social, and economic development affecting our society. The need for the formal education system to be reinforced and supported by non-formal education was recognized and stated. To better demonstrate the connection between non-formal education and learning opportunities and experiences and youth work, let me present two competence models for youth workers that exist on European level. On the left side of the slide, we can see the structure of the Council of Europe Youth Work Portfolio, and on the right side, the structure of the IOCOMO competence model for youth workers to work internationally, which was developed in the framework of European Training Strategy. To explain, the European Training Strategy itself is a strategic framework for youth workers' education and training, specifically in the framework of the programs Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. This mainly involves projects at different levels of international dimension, which is the reason why the ETS competence models is focused on international youth work. On the other hand, the Council of Europe portfolio is designed to support a wide variety of forms for practicing youth work, sometimes very local and grassroots activities. So each of those competence models is presented here by the titles of different competence areas that they include. However, if we explore further them in detail, we'll see that in each of those sections we have lists of competencies defined by the elements: knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. A very valuable feature of both competence models is that besides the textual description and explanations of different competencies in each group, they also offer tools for self-assessment. In my opinion, this makes them really valuable to support youth work professionals' development, allowing them to use models in each step of their career development, identifying their strengths, areas for development, learning goals, and also assess how well do they progress. This way, they foster the lifelong learning of the professional youth workers. Each of those competence models has its own strengths. The Council of Europe portfolio allows users to identify whether and to which extent each of the competencies is related to their work practice and context. And this way they can actually better identify which areas they should focus more on and which are not so important for them. The positive side of the ETS competence model is that it allows users to assess themselves not only in terms of attitude, skills, knowledge, but also how often they demonstrate certain professional behaviors. We can see screenshots on the slide. So as we see also from the slide, the competence groups of both models are quite interconnected, and both involve preparedness of youth workers to support learning, and we see that this is also mentioned in more than one competence group. Going further, we can also see that on national levels, the existing competence models also acknowledge the youth workers' role in supporting young people's learning. On the current slide, we can see a part of the analysis of competence models in 10 European countries. This table is a part of the final report from a mapping exercise coordinated by the Council of Europe, conducted in 2017-2018, which aimed to explore the education and career paths of youth workers and gather knowledge about youth work across Europe. I had the pleasure to be part of this research, so I'm really happy to share the results here today too. As evident from the data presented, competencies related to facilitating learning are among the top 3 most sought in these national documents. So, in light of this all, we can conclude that youth work and youth workers are expected to implement an important function in terms of supporting young people's learning and development. Based on this, I believe that there is already a niche where youth pedagogy as a special subfield of pedagogical knowledge can be developed. Actually, some authors are already working and developing these concepts. In German language literature, it is possible to find books and publications on Jugendpädagogik or youth pedagogy, and it is also often formulated as Waldorf Jugendpädagogik. On the other hand, we also have Mikhail Rzeszow's definition on youth pedagogy. On the slide, we can see it. He basically explains that junogogika or youth pedagogy explores the pedagogical influence or interaction which supports young people developing skills for both self-identification and also socially oriented way of thinking, supporting the education and socialization of young people. Dr. Martin Rolson, in his lecture, he also mentions the keywords about activations and engagement by series of learning opportunities and experiences. However, although there is so much learning in the context of youth work, and there are so many publications of non-formal education in terms of approaches, methodologies, best practices, etc., still it is very rare to see youth work and pedagogical practice together in the English language literature. Of course, youth workers have many other functions, so youth work and youth pedagogy do not entirely overlap as concepts, but in my opinion, youth pedagogy can be developed both as a scientific topic and also a module in the curriculum for professional education of youth workers. I also believe that such step would not only contribute to designing more meaningful learning opportunities for young people in the context of youth work activities, but this would also help for the wider recognition of youth work even beyond the existing international youth work community. Because the reality is that we have people who are active in the field of youth, we talk about youth work, we have a lot of activities, seminars, and so on. But if we go to people out of this bubble, we can see that not many people really understand what youth work is, what are the purposes, approaches. Some people still think that youth workers are just young people who work, which is not exactly true. So, going next, on the slide we can see some of the main characteristics of youth pedagogy. But this is far not an exhaustive list. Here just the key elements which I identified so far. So youth pedagogy is taking place mainly in the field of youth work. So it is specially directed to the out of school learning. So it's pedagogy out of the school. As youth pedagogy is situated in the domain of non-formal education, of course, it shall follow the main principles of non-formal education, such as being inclusive, ensuring equal and voluntary participation of all interested young people, It should have a planned program and predefined learning outcomes. It should be process-oriented and learner-centered. In addition, it should foster experiential learning and it should provide safe space for young people to gain experiences and learn from them. Of course, it should support young people's socialization and should have a holistic approach. This means to take into account young people's psychological, emotional, and cognitive development, as well also as the background, situation, and context they live in. And based on those characteristics, I would formulate the following features for the professional profile of youth pedagogy practitioners. First of all, following the good examples of the European competence models for youth workers, which we explored a little bit earlier, I believe that such a professional profile should not only describe the competence areas in terms of relevant skills, knowledge, and attitudes, but it should also provide space for analysis how often certain professional behavior is demonstrated in this context. Additionally, I would really like to involve certain self-assessment tool, so it can be used both by new and experienced practitioners and could be also implemented in the framework of attestation practices that exist in some organizations and in some countries. Next, as we see, here are some functions which are actually directly connected to the youth pedagogy characteristics which were mentioned on the previous slide. So, of course, about holistically approaching young people, building positive and equal relations with them, providing them also opportunities for supporting them and also self-advocacy. It should foster both individual and group learning, and youth pedagogy practitioners should be able to design both group interaction processes but also moments for self-reflection and individual feedback. Additionally, we should build and maintain a safe and positive learning environment, both physically safe but also methodologically. So this means to foster a positive culture of achievements in the youth work practice. Of course, we would need skills to support young people's socialization and development of social skills. And here we should have special attention about intercultural awareness and self-awareness, tolerance, ability to adapt to different groups and behave inclusively towards the vulnerable others, as well as acknowledging one's own identity and values. Of course, this is just the beginning, and this list is still to be further complemented and elaborated. And finally, let me share how I see the next steps and results I would like to achieve when exploring the topic of youth pedagogy. First, of course, I would like to initiate discussion and exchange of ideas with different stakeholders such as young people, youth workers, researchers, policymakers. So all these contributions could help further developing the concept of youth pedagogy, which of course would be relevant to the realities of the youth work. Then we should of course focus on identifying key aspects and topics that should be involved in the youth pedagogy. And based on that, I would like to help developing learning content for youth workers, which would be appropriate and also accessible for the international youth work community. So in a couple of years, we would find youth pedagogy also in the English language literature. And in case you are or you got interested in this topic today, I would be really happy to get in touch with you later on and exchange ideas and perspectives. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day and of the Congress. Thank you.